Welcome, rational thinkers and champions of evidence-based reasoning, to the Free of Faith podcast. This is the place where we dare to peel back the comforting but opaque layers of faith-based claims and expose their logical shortcomings. Today's episode invites you to join a thought experiment, a forensic examination of miracle claims, old and new. Why do so many accept fantastical stories from antiquity while rejecting identical claims made today? Why is a probable hoax today considered likely true if set in the time of prophets, tunics, and donkeys? Let's get warmed up with a simple scenario. Your honest friend Tom recounts a tale from a very credible source who insists that, in a nearby town, someone called down fire from the sky. That's right, divine fire upon request. Tom is convinced. Would you be? Chances are you'd respond with reasonable skepticism. You'd want names, evidence, and preferably some smartphone footage. You'd expect to trace the story to direct witnesses or some kind of public record. But what if all you had were vague anecdotes and anonymous claims written down years later? You'd probably dismiss the whole thing, right? Yet, open an ancient religious text and you'll find equally implausible events. Seas parting at command, dead people emerging from tombs and the like. Somehow, millions readily accept these alleged events as true. If Tom's story fails under scrutiny, why don't these? What's going on here? This is where the bias of ancient mystique steps in. Stories shrouded in historical fog often feel immune to ordinary standards of evidence. There's something seductive about the distant past, a world imagined as rich with magic and meaning. The further away the story, the more elastic our standards seem to become. It's the same mechanism that allows us to cheer for impossible feats in fantasy films, yet snort when someone claims they saw Bigfoot last week. Distance dilutes our doubt. But should it? Let's be honest, the laws of physics didn't take a vacation in 30 CE. Water didn't become easier to walk on back then, and dead people didn't have a higher bounce-back rate. Our skepticism shouldn't expire with time, and this is not a uniquely Christian blind spot. It's universal. Muslims accept the moon splitting of Muhammad, but scoff at the golden plates of Joseph Smith. Christians believe in Lazarus rising, but demand hard evidence for miracles from other traditions. This isn't a contest of credibility, it's a parade of double standards. To expose the inconsistency, let's conduct a parallel analysis of two identical claims, separated only by time. Claim 1. A newspaper from 10 years ago reports that, in a New York cemetery, the dead rose from their graves and appeared to many across the city. Claim 2. The Gospel of Matthew reports that, following Jesus' resurrection, many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised and appeared to many in Jerusalem. Now, imagine pressing a journalist on the New York story. You'd ask, who witnessed this? Are they named? Can we interview them? Why wasn't it immediately reported by other outlets? Where's the video? The police report? Any corroboration at all? Now apply those same questions to the gospel account. What do we find? No named witnesses. No independent documentation. No secondary sources from the time, even though Jerusalem was a hub of activity. The event was, we're told, public and miraculous. Yet not a single Roman historian, Jewish scribe, or curious bystander seems to have jotted it down. Wouldn't a mass resurrection have made a bit more noise? This brings us to the crux of the issue. If we'd reject the New York resurrection story based on lack of documentation, named witnesses, or corroborating sources, we must apply the same standards to the story in Matthew. Time alone cannot substitute for evidence. An ancient tale doesn't become more trustworthy because it aged well. It simply becomes harder to verify. And this matters because believers often construct entire worldviews on these events. If belief in Jesus' resurrection is essential for salvation, wouldn't a responsible deity ensure the event was documented immediately and in multiple ways? Wouldn't there be dozens of witnesses with smartphone evidence, even centuries later? But there aren't. What we have, instead, is an oral tradition that is fluid, malleable, and shaped over decades by theology, not eyewitnesses. As stories pass from mouth to mouth, details mutate, embellishments accumulate, and emotional investment hardens soft rumor into sacred history. Here's an analogy. Imagine a rumor circulates that someone in a small town flew through the air unaided. At first, it's a local joke. Then someone repeats it more earnestly. A few decades later, a distant cousin writes it down as a powerful metaphor. Fast forward 100 years, and it's retold as fact in an official community chronicle. Is that good evidence that someone actually flew? Of course not. But that's how miracle stories evolve, through repetition, reverence, and the slow erosion of skepticism. Theologians might say, ancient people didn't write everything down. True. But the Bible was written for such a grand event as the dead walking the streets of Jerusalem. Would we not expect anyone to mention it besides gospel writers decades after the event? Still others argue that because early Christians were willing to die for their faith, their stories, the accounts must be true. But martyrdom only proves conviction, not correctness. People die for erroneous beliefs all the time. Sincerity isn't evidence. If the only reason you believe a story is because it's in an old book you've been told is sacred, that's not evidence. That's tradition, and tradition is not truth. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And if a resurrection in New York would be met with critical questions and demands for documentation, then so must one in ancient Jerusalem. Consistency is not optional. It's the bedrock of rational inquiry. This is more than a philosophical exercise. This is about the frameworks we use to interpret reality. If we abandon critical thinking for faith-based confidence in one domain, we risk compromising our judgment in others. Let's not pretend that ancient miracle stories deserve a free pass simply because they're comfortable, popular, or traditional. If this conversation has sparked some questions, or even some discomfort, that's a good thing. Questioning is the first step toward clarity. Don't settle for easy answers or platitudes. Dive deeper, explore further, and demand evidence. Head over to Free of Faith to read the full article and join the discussion. Let's keep this conversation going, because the pursuit of truth doesn't stop at questioning. It's about finding answers that actually make sense. Thank you for tuning in to the Free of Faith podcast, where we expose the logical failings of faith and celebrate the clarity that comes with reason. Until next time, stay skeptical, stay curious, and remember, rationality always outperforms faith. Engage reality, and I'll see you soon.